California, some local governments and state governments have decided to take matters into their own hands because of the drain on services, increases in crime, and so on and so forth. And in this community, there is a growing constituency that is not satisfied with the status quo answer. They're not buying it from this city and its officials and other cities. In fact, some people think we make it too easy for illegal immigrants to locate here, a sanctuary city, if you will. So if you are elected mayor in November, will there be any change in the posture that the city has taken on illegal immigrants in Lexington? We'll start where we left off with Mr. Horine, who finished us the last time.
Well, I think through our efforts in law enforcement, we need to reprioritize our entire law enforcement situation here locally. And one of the things I see, I don't want to profile people and just pull them over because they're an illegal immigrant or just because we think they are and then deport them. But what we do need to do is, if these people commit crimes, they need to be prosecuted for them. And what happens now is people, commit a crime who don't speak our language, don't speak English, they speak another language, the police officers can't understand them, and they just let them go. If I committed some of these crimes, I'd be in jail. I had one instance where a car flipped over because the person fell asleep, hit a flagpole, and knocked the flagpole over. And they just let him go. Now, if I'd done that, I'd be in jail. So we need to treat everyone in town fairly.
Mayor Newberry.
I'll be watching very closely what goes on with respect to some of these new approaches to dealing with the immigration problem or challenge through the court system. The prevailing wisdom now is that any involvement by state or local governments is contrary to the federal Constitution. If that interpretation of the law is maintained, I foresee no change at the state or local level. However, I do think there will be a change at the federal level simply because the sentiment is correctly being voiced that our immigration system is broken, it has to be repaired, and I'd like to think at some point Congress and the President will address that. To the extent people are here, be they here legally or illegally, they have an obligation to follow the laws. And to the degree they violate state or local laws, we intend to enforce the law fully against everybody equally. And we need to do that aggressively with respect to all folks. But in terms of how we're dealing with the immigration system, I doubt we will make much change. We have been reporting all foreign-born individuals who are incarcerated at our jail to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency so that they can make a determination about whether or not those individuals should be deported, and a number of them have been over the course of the last couple of years since that policy has been in place. But it seems to be working well, and that's a policy that the folks at ICE have indicated serves their needs most effectively.
Vice Mayor Gray.
You're right, Cruiser. The status quo is not acceptable. Now, I come at this from the point of view of being in business, and if you're in the construction business, this is a real big problem. What you know is there are stresses on businesses, and there are stresses on individuals, and there are stresses on neighborhoods, cities, and states. Status quo not acceptable. What is encouraging as a result of the Arizona actions is that the federal government is now stepping up. It's clear that the federal government will step up and help us on this issue.
Mayor Isaac.
I think it's important to realize that Lexington is not a sanctuary city and has not been a sanctuary city. And I think that is misinformation that is out there and has been spread. When people in Lexington commit a crime, regardless of their background, they are arrested. If they are here illegally, they are deported. We have also set up perimeters at the request of ICE, at tobacco warehouses, at construction sites, at horse farms. So that kind of cooperation is going on with ICE and has gone on with ICE. I think whatever side of this issue you're on, it's good that the Arizona legislature passed that law because it makes the federal government realize they have to step up to the plate and carry out their duties under the U.S. Constitution. The immigration laws are their responsibility. Law enforcement at the local level when crimes are committed are the responsibility of the police in Lexington, and they carry those out regardless of where you're from. If you commit a crime, you're arrested. If you're illegal, you're deported.
Well, you've all pretty much expressed that sentiment, but then there's the case of Cristobal Ramirez Cordova, who was involved in a head-on collision that killed a nurse who worked at UK hospital, had no license. This is not the first time he had been cited for that. Doesn't show up for his hearing, and since then has also been charged with manslaughter. There's some allegation that he might have been impaired. So he had some warnings that this was an individual who should not have been free to be on our roads. He should have been detained. I mean, there's a lot of frustration about that. So I'll start with you again, former Mayor Isaac. Although we talk about deporting illegal immigrants who commit another crime while they're here in Lexington, in this particular case, this is one that got away.
I'm a former prosecutor, and I can say when I was mayor, all the cases that I was involved in, we correctly followed the procedure. I was not the prosecutor in that case. You would have to ask the prosecutor in that case how they handled it.
Mr. Horine?
Well,
Would he have been, if you were mayor, would he have been detained from the
yes.
get-go?
Yes.
All right.
And, you know, it's not just about illegal immigrants, it's about everyone, because we don't have a system with the police department that prioritizes what they arrest people for. And some of the things they arrest people for is completely moronic, to say the least. And to have a police officer sit in front of a service company for a week who's is a detective because a $150 broken item, someone missed a phone call, so they think that there's some sort of crime that's being committed, to the $1,800 of the salary plus expenses, but yet this guy gets let go. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. We need to fix it.
Mr. Newberry, are you satisfied in this particular case that the right thing was done, or did we make a mistake?
As that case is prosecuted, I think we'll be in a better position to make an ultimate assessment about whether or not the decision to cite as opposed to arrest was appropriate. Had he been arrested, it's hard to say with the benefit of hindsight how the outcome might have been different. He had been incarcerated, if I recall correctly, twice previously. His information had been submitted to ICE. They did not issue a detainer order against him as a consequence of that. There was no basis for continuing to hold him as a result of his immigration status. So ICE had a couple of opportunities to issue a detainer order. They chose not to do so. Obviously, you wish they had.
So are we at the mercy of ICE if we detain someone who's broken another law while they're in Lexington? It's your position that what has happened is ICE makes the decision, we'll take him or we're not going to take him.
It's not my position, that's the law.
That's the law.
The only base, we can keep people in our jail for the pendency of their criminal, state or local criminal charges. Once those charges run their course, whether they're convicted or acquitted, then we have no basis for detaining them further unless ICE issues that detainer order and then proceeds with the deportation process. So as a matter of law, we are dependent upon ICE.
Vice Mayor Gray?
As elected officials, we often have to follow the laws that are in place with clenched fists. Very tough to do that, especially under conditions and examples like this. But that is our responsibility within our justice system. But when, for example, we don't take action, let's say, for example, if there's a hit and run accident, that's when setting up roadblocks and actively engaging is what we need to do.
Well, you mentioned the law. Let me ask you,